Welcome back to Gallifrey Stands, fresh for the end of 2023. It's our Christmas special, and we're talking about the Doctor Who Christmas special, where we welcome, like for his first full episode, Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, and we, I think they said foundle Ruby Rose 9. That's their words, not mine. I would never foundle a lady without kind permission, but that's another story. And of course, my name is Dr. Squee. With me, as always, is Willoo, somewhere just off shot. And I am, of course, joined by two fine gentlemen to talk about this Christmas special this year. So, I like to think this week between Christmas and New Year's, marks that, changing of the years. So, as is often represented with the end of a year, it's old man time, and please welcome our old man time from WhoNews, Mr. Paul G. How are you doing, Paul?
Good evening. Not so bad. Looking forward to the end of the year.
Oh God, yeah. I don't trust 2023 on the way out, but we of course have to welcome one other gentleman. And where we have old man time, with the passing of 1 year, we get the little baby new year coming. And here's a man who has the hairline of a baby. Please welcome from the Netheads podcast, Mr. Will Wilkins.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. And if I weren't wearing this hat, I would look like a baby with glasses. So, I'll take it.
You keep youthful that way.
Well, you just said you were being joined by two fine gentlemen, and I'm waiting to find out who the second guy is.
Well, Will's there. Sorry, Paul's
it's
right
me.
There. Come on, it's me. Oh, you meant you, right? Okay. Guys, I want to, a little bit before we go into the sort of the episode itself, I want to talk about the kind of I guess the idea of the kind of third age of Doctor Who, and welcoming in the first gay, the first openly gay Doctor, I should say, and the first Doctor who I know that Jo Martin was the first Black Doctor, and I'm not trying to take that away from her, and I know there were the Timeless Children, some which were Black, but it is the first running Black Doctor, the first time on a weekly ongoing Doctor Who that some people are going to be able to see Doctor Who, themselves in Doctor Who, in a way that they won't been able to previously. I know there's been a lot of consternation amongst some, shall we say, some of the classic fans, as I'm sure they'd love to be called, who kind of have a problem with their representation and with all this change and everything. But to me, it's just really nice that one thing I loved about Doctor Who, and I realized it more than I perhaps did even as a child, is that Doctor Who, it did feel like representing me, not particularly personally because of skin color or gender, but because it was a person who was kind of a bit out of kilter with the rest of society, which I felt as a child. And just the thought that other people are going to get that experience, and as I say, their gayness might feel represented, their ethnicity might feel represented. I think it's just a really wonderful thing, and I know that sounds very right on to say, but just thoughts on the beginning of our new age of Doctor Who, gents. Who wants to kick off?
Oh, I hate it. No, I'm kidding. Sorry. After you said that, I just couldn't help myself.
Oh, no, you had to. Yeah.
Paul, please, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, sort of thing, I think this feels less like a box tick I think it's just the right guy for the right part at the right time, to be honest. I think we've had a certain degree of representation in the past with like characters like Martha, Mickey, sort of thing, that have started to come through. And I think it's one of those things. I think is as long as you can clearly see that somebody is talented, somebody's got the skills, somebody's got the presence that is required to play that particular part, then it doesn't really matter. I think anything where things can go slightly wrong is when you start to get characters that are just there to what it feels like tick a box, which is can be a shame and what have you. But no, I think I think he's good for the part. I think it's certainly, as you say, it's like feels like a third age of Doctor Who and a new chapter going forwards. In some I get sort of thing what you're saying about sort of in the past, traditionally how the Doctor's been played means that maybe you identify more, you may identify more just because of it's somebody who almost reflects how you may visually look.
Yeah.
But to a certain extent, the Doctor has always been alien. He's always been outsider. He always has been that. He doesn't quite fit with society. Doesn't quite understand how society works, and in some respects, sort of thing, can seem very human, but at other times seems very alien. And and to be honest, sort of thing, it's growing up and what have you, the Doctor was just always that magical character for me, sort of thing, that was just doing the right thing, sort of thing. Yeah. It never, there seems to have been a, if we're sort of like skirting around this at the time, now, sort of thing, in the same way that like there's been this sort of like reimagining of Davros, sort of thing. I've never looked at Davros. I've never looked at him being somebody disabled or confined to a wheelchair and thought to myself, my God, all wheelchair people are evil. Davros was evil because he was evil. Sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean that one's a difficult one because I do get
it is.
I've heard people say that, but it's like at the same time I do get that there is an unfortunate, shall we say, to say the least, history of disabled characters being portrayed as evil. So even though we may not have seen that in Davros, I get why kind of like that could be a raw nerve to disabled people as they've been traditionally portrayed.
It's a tricky one, sort of thing, because how far do you then take that? Do you sort of look at the likes of Missy, and she's female? Can female evil characters, not sure, sort of thing.
No, but like I don't think there is the same. Like if anything, female characters have just been maligned in the past. So it's like it's like them being front and center is the difference. Or there.
Potentially like Sacha Dhawan, sort of thing, as the Master, evil once. I do get what you mean. I struggle with that kind. Whereas if I think most people, or the majority of people, come to, and that the character is evil because they're evil, and are you doing a partly a disservice? I'm sort of taking this in the wrong direction. That are you now saying that you can't have people with particular traits play certain characters because there will be this link between evil and that trait? So what does that limit you to, sort of thing? And I don't know.
I mean, I think there's certainly a degree of sort of like catching up, like, redressing the amount of characters who are in a wheelchair or, who are disabled, who are seen as just evil characters and seen as good characters, and, or there is a variety of characters who are disabled who are featured. Then it doesn't matter what they're playing because it's like we've seen that representation. Till we get there, though, like you said, there is some thorny issues there, but it's like generally, I think the representation and the way they're kind of trying to change it to add in more kind of layers to that, I think is net a good thing. But Will,
I think I'm just going to go with my thoughts on the episode overall.
Fairdies.
Well, and the reason why is because I was far more impressed in this with Ncuti Gatwa than I was in what I'm just going to say the previous episode, because they all kind of in a way tie together, even though this was really supposed to be Ncuti's, this is his premiere, this is his first solo episode. and you know, kind of getting into the person of color and fairness and representation, you know, a lot of the big moments we kind of expect from a first time with the Doctor episode, he kind of got gypped in his first episode. He didn't really get those things, right? He didn't get the reveal of the inside of the TARDIS. We really didn't get a proper oh my gosh, it's bigger on the inside, you know. We didn't get those kind of things because some of them were taken in the previous installment. All that said, however, I can definitely tell you this is a man that has the gravitas for the role. He brings a refreshed energy. If you've been following the story all along, you know, this is the first Doctor we're seeing that in some ways is unburdened with his previous glorious purpose. And we see this in the very first few moments of this episode, and he carries that type of joyful energy throughout the performance. So for a first Doctor's episode, and as an entry point for some people into Doctor Who, because I know I myself got drawn in to the hype when Matt Smith became the Doctor. So, you know, it really is kind of an open door to let new people discover it, a new open house, if you will. And it really, I believe, served the purpose well, because we've got a companion that is bright and energetic and a breath of fresh air, and Ncuti himself is just slaying it. So I really enjoyed, overall I enjoyed the episode. There were not a lot of pits for me to nitpick.
And he's slaying it for Christmas. Come on, Christmas.
There you go. I didn't even mean to say that, but
I did want to just add, there was one thing which someone said online which I thought was kind of brilliant, was that, you know how there's the traditional kind of Who hands pose that they do when they get announced as the Doctor. It seems like, you know, they brought that into every Doctor you know, nowadays. But I love the fact that someone pointed out that if you see the pictures with Ncuti, he's reaching his hand out with his hand palm up. So it's kind of like welcoming. And it does feel like he's that kind of Doctor. He is the kind of like very welcoming. He talks in the modern parlance like of babes and hun and things like that, which could sound really twee, but it just suits it. Like it just, that sounds natural to him to speak like that. So I'm really glad they've done that. And again, that's the kind of thing which makes some people who like, oh wow, the Doctors never talk like I talk like that. I use that kind of language. Not me personally, by the way, but I love that's something which people can sort of like feel kind of akin to in that way. But yeah, it's just, as soon as he was on the screen, it really just felt like, you know, I do take your point as well, Will, that I think where they're trying to sort of like launch this as kind of day one for the Disney Plus generation of Doctor Who, and for the third version of Doctor Who, whatever you like to call it. It does feel like they wanted to do what they did with Rose and make it a really fresh start, so you don't have to get bogged down in kind of all the traditions of what happens when someone regenerates. But at the same time, yeah, I did miss him finding his outfit and his finding his Sonic and him having those kind of like moments. But I sort of get why you do it at the same time. Paul, what did you feel about the kind of like intro to Ncuti?
Yeah, I think you're bang on there, sort of thing, because you mentioned sort of very Rose-like, and this reminded me of a very Rose-like episode, and almost like a reimagining of it, sort of thing, in the same way that you had Eccleston just appear, sort of thing. There wasn't, you know, you didn't know where he'd come from, you didn't know the background of it. Okay, we've got a bit more of that with Ncuti, but it was very much a case of, okay, we're introducing the companion. I mean, for the first 20 odd minutes, you didn't really see much of the Doctor at all, which you know, and in some ways I think that's a little bit of a shame, sort of thing, given that this is his launch episode, sort of thing. And so if anything, you really want to introduce the character. If you go back to like you talked about the Matt Smith will sort of thing, here's the 11th hour, Matt Smith was there from the beginning, and you had 50 minutes of him, sort of thing. And I think it would have been nice to have Ncuti be that sort of thing, whereas you had an awful lot of investment of time in you know, Ruby, her family, her background, sort of thing, and that's fine. Yeah, as long as you're going to get a lot of payback from that. If you're going to see a lot of that family in the same way you did with Rose's mum sort of thing, where you get that introduction, so you establish that character, and you see a lot of her through the series. It's whether you're going to get that same amount of, the gran and the mum sort of thing throughout the series. I don't know. You may well do, sort of thing, and if it is, it's an investment. But I think you could have had more of the the 14th Doctor on screen.
And it's funny that you mentioned that about the version that we saw, and apparently one of the first impacts that Russell T Davies is not him not saying an impact, but like from a story impact standpoint, Disney Plus apparently made a request. They wanted more Doctor up front, so everything after the pram gag leading up to the TARDIS buggering off was something that they did a pickup on in order to give us more Doctor in the front end of the show,
which is kind of interesting, because then it implies, I mean, it one thing, it's nice to sort of like see that Russell has obviously had his vision, he obviously had his sort of like tempo for the story in the introduction of of the new Doctor sort of thing. But now you're getting, the studio is coming in and sort of saying, hey, we're not so happy with this. So you, if anything, I've got a slight concern of how much influence.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you've already got a date, because I couldn't help but notice it was December the 24th, not the 24th of December. Well, I don't want to blame you personally, but
hey, the whole thing is, I honestly thought ahead of time, I thought this was just a streaming distribution deal. I didn't realize apparently they, Disney Plus really must have kicked into the Bad Wolf.
It's the amount of money. Yeah. It's the amount of money that they put forward. They get some say for that. Let's face it.
So but I hope it's not much. I hope it's just minor requests, because otherwise too, like part of the reason why we have to have this investment in the Sundays, if you will, is because on a Sunday, that's a coincidence. The reason why we have to have that investment is because this one, it was a holiday special, because you think about it, we get an investment in these characters, and then we get this very miniature version of It's a Wonderful Life in the latter the third act of the episode.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask, Will, did you have any idea who Davina McCall is? Just by the by.
Okay, now if first of all, I'm not good with names, I'm good with faces. Oh, but her name was mentioned a few times. So, but the former host of Big Brother, and then there was a holiday, not a holiday special, but more of a zombie Halloween special where I can't remember the name of it, but I think she also appeared in that as the host of that Big Brother where the zombie attack happened. Can't remember the name of that special though. Anyway, so yes, I have some awareness. I wasn't aware that she was doing a found family type show now though, and apparently she actually is. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's an ITV over here. It's showing on.
Gotcha.
And I mean, I would say everything about this episode seemed perfect for a Christmas episode. I do hope some of it kind of doesn't follow through onto the regular run, just because I want the regular run to be this is a kind of a good campy romp of a kind of episode, which it should be. And I think we're going to see a bit of that going into the.
I think we don't understand the mavity of the situation yet.
No, that's probably true.
There's by episode 7, if he hasn't gone back and fixed this. But also think about it. It's just the name, and for the Doctor, it's just the translation of a property of physics when he's speaking about it with us dumb Earth people who call it mavity now.
Yeah.
No, we can't let Donna Noble win, guys. We can't. This has to be undone at some point.
But it's I mean, the goblins seem like a really great Christmassy thing. And right from the beginning, I mean, I've seen people complain that it's oh yeah, but it's more fantasy, and Doctor Who's never been fantasy. It's oh, sorry, the Sister of Khan. Sorry, just to go back to the Fourth Doctor, where they said that they were the epitome of the science that's become so advanced that it appears as if magic to us. And why is this any different? I don't know.
It just came off of what is it, the Toy Maker?
Yeah, exactly. A toy maker's role, which people got no problem with. There's been so many examples of this throughout Doctor Who. I don't know why some traditional fans, again, some old school fans, shall we say, who have a problem with this. It's like they've not watched the rest of the show.
Even in recent series, man. I mean, Peter Capaldi had an entire episode about the things that hide under the bed or in the dark behind you, in the shadows when you're not looking.
But you don't even have to, like, you can also go back to the original series. So it's not like there's nothing new under the sun at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, you were going to say something?
Yeah, all I was going to say was I think it's because of the association is, I'm not trying to defend it, sort of thing. The association is that goblins are typically more fairy tale, and I think it's that sort of like it's one step further on. I think if you look back through the series, it probably started off as science fiction, as over the time it's sort of moved to more science fantasy, where you've got more fantasy elements coming in, and I think for some people it just felt more fantasy like. I think also because there's no, goblins, you didn't get really any background for them. They weren't really heavily used, sort of thing, in this. They were there, sort of thing, but they, in terms of threat, they didn't seem to be like a huge threat. Where they came from, none of that was explained. I'm not saying you needed the complete background on it, but it's all of a sudden they've just appeared out of nowhere, and nobody seems to sort of notice this ship floating over London or anything like that. So it feels more labyrinth, magical.
Well, that's the thing, though. But it's like, especially for the Christmas ones, like we've had Christmas Carol done, we've had the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe done. We the Christmas specials, especially in the New Who era, established a great tradition of like, oh, this is our version of this story. Like, and really, it doesn't really bear that much similarity to the plot of Labyrinth, but it is Doctor Who does Labyrinth in a way. And the same thing with the
stealing babies and goblins.
Yeah,
the Goblin King, for gosh sakes. I mean, I was like, that's not Bowie at all. What is this?
Well, come on, it might be a bit tricky to get Bowie back. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, yeah.
I'd love it, but unfortunately, the showmakers haven't got the resurrection spell quite down just yet.
Well, and one of the things too that I think I liked about this episode was that at least it was, not to lean on into what was in the episode, but there's like always certain truths that get established in an episode that become part of that episode's language. And like it seemed like the one thing that happened in this one was always Ncuti talking about, as the Doctor talking about, learning the language, right? Because at first it was like just for her picking up on the whole scene of what's going on, but then later on with the way goblins build their things is the language of rope, and he has to learn it and use his wonderful giant doctor brain to understand that, and that kind of carries through the whole thing. So I like that aspect of it a lot.
Well, let's start going through the episode bit by bit. So like I did like the way they introduced Ruby as our kind of way in, which is very Russell T to do. And then you've got I like the way in which she kind of got to see the Doctor. The idea that the Doctor went to a rave. I kind of like ideas in Doctor Who which we haven't seen before. Kind of if when I first see them, I'm going, oh, the Doctor's raving. That's a bit weird. But of course, he's fitting into the modern world. He is kind of a Doctor who is lighter and who is maybe a bit more apt for new experiences, because he's kind of rediscovering what it is to be the Doctor after kind of jettisoning, like you were saying before, Will, some of his kind of past adventures that they've happened. He can jettison some of the kind of like the kind of grief of some of the stuff he's been through. But he kind of carries forward this new kind of bit of information he's found out about his like adoptive status, which feeds very nicely into Ruby. So that all really kind of clicked very nicely for me. And yeah, the fact that he's there getting in amongst people seems very Doctor Who. And I love the line that he's the health and safety gin and tonic division was just the best. That's
the first use of the psychic paper in Ncuti's era. That's a nice little touch.
Yeah, and it continues on when he's in the street, and it's like the snowman head. And the woman with the prams goes, seriously, a pram at midnight? It's got my shopping in it. It just and when he's talking to
the part that got added in, that entire conversation with the officer, I loved, because again,
Oh,
it's a great way to let people know. So the guy that's kind of been like creepy and on the periphery of this young woman, this is who he is, and obviously, don't worry, he's not a threat. So that entire exchange, but the part that really got me the most was just like the cop says, "I have a few questions," and just this moment, this diatribe he goes into, because he's like, "I've been through this so many times. Just use your pencil and try and keep up, okay?" It's just like, name the doctor, occupation, not a doctor. And I from there on, I'm like, yep, Ncuti is now my doctor. He takes the role over anyone else. I accept you, sir. Let's go.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like I talked about seeing the doctor in yourself. Like I feel this is no less my doctor than any other doctor. Like I felt like the kindness, the kind of wit, the like even as he's kind of like slightly flippant, he goes like, "Doctor, not a doctor," and he goes, "By the way, she's gonna say yes," and then totally clues out why he knows that he's going to propose, because like the Sonic scan, that was a diamond, which means it's probably a woman, because a man probably wouldn't pick a diamond, and just all this stuff he kind of pieces together. It's just very Doctor Who.
Well, and from a writing standpoint, great way to bring the Sonic into the conversation. So it made this little noise, and then we get down on this wonderful little analytic journey, but also got to talk about the Sonic a bit. Which, by the way, available yet, guys? Any links?
Haven't seen anything yet, Paul.
I haven't seen anything I haven't seen anything on that front yet. So
yeah, I was hoping for a bit of a better look at it though on screen, because I've seen some wonderful photos, and it can.
The BBC, through one of the channels or one of the Doctor Who channels, Ncuti does give a very like thorough walkthrough of the Sonic.
Oh yeah, I just meant on screen, like.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
No, yeah. Oh god, no,
way,
I agree with you. Yeah.
Sorry for all the sipping, because sadly, it's I'm on holiday this week, and so I've been finding myself waking up around 9:30. So I'm just still trying to get the energy level just right for you guys.
Will, please, thank you very much for getting up early your time to join us.
I wasn't early. I've been a lazy bum. I'm on holiday. Anyway,
hey, I've mostly slept through Christmas, because I got a bug just before, like Christmas Eve. I got this bug. Basically slept through Christmas Eve, slept through half of Christmas Day. I only woke up to it. I watched Jingle Jangle before I watched the Christmas special, and then pretty much fell asleep again. I mean, that was my Christmas right there. So I'm just enjoying a can of alcohol while I can now.
Can I share a personal story for just a moment, Paul? I'm so sorry. Once again, he's like,
go for it.
Squee, why have you had this yank on? He's driving me crazy. Listen, the funniest part that I knew what happened Christmas morning was that the Christmas special would be happening, but it would also be Christmas morning. And at about 11 a.m., I said to my family, for Christmas, I would really just like to be able to sit down and watch the Doctor Who Christmas special, right?
Oh,
I said that at 11 a.m. At 11:45, I was finally hitting pause or unpause to finally watch the episode proper. But, because everyone was excited with their new things, and everyone had stuff to talk about, and my wife checking on me for making the deviled eggs in time to take to her mom's and all that stuff. So, but I made the announcement because I knew exactly what was going to happen, and it played out perfectly. I'm just like, no, I'm not watching it right now. Everyone is having fun. Be a family man. The doctor will wait for you.
Do you know, it reminds me of when I was once back at my mum's with my brothers at Christmas time. And I've been looking forward all day to the Christmas special of Doctor Who. And, you got to remember, like, well, all three of us here, I believe, go back to the days when you couldn't just record stuff. You couldn't just pause TV and everything. We remember when, if you missed Doctor Who when it was on, you missed it. And I remember all the times when bloody sporting events were on, which I have no truck with. I am not a sports guy, and my brothers would put on sports, and I'd have to miss Doctor Who. And like, what would really take the biscuit is when they had the same sport on two TVs, on the two TVs where you could put it on. And I was sitting there on Christmas Day on just like, this is years later, obviously, where you can pause and do all these other things. But my brother started talking over Doctor Who, and I go, oh, for Christ's sake, after all those years of watching that fucking sport, I just want to watch Doctor Who on Christmas Day. And I lost it like I was a 3-year-old. I threw my toys properly out of the pram.
Oh, that's
Kids,
genius.
I was going to say, kids don't know they're born, sort of thing. I was in tears because I had to do rugby practice on when the last episode of A Logopolis was going out, and I missed Tom Baker regenerating, sort of thing. I got home from that rugby practice and had missed it. So
you see, these old scars don't go away, and like I know
I
you
don't.
can pause it, but if you can watch it live, there is something about it. Like no,
I don't mean to date myself, and maybe I'm going to blame my dad now for my addiction to technology, because I remember at the time we were coming back from a family trip, and I was in the back of what nowadays we'd call a conversion van, right? And my dad had purchased, it was such a thing at the time, that it was a TV that could plug into the cigarette outlet, that you could use rabbit ears. It wasn't very big, but yay big screen. But I will never forget trying to watch, and this is definitely going to date myself, the Star Wars holiday special while we were driving, because that thing aired in like early December. And I'll be gosh darn, I just got a few moments of it, but I was so devastated that I hadn't seen it. And then, of course, naturally, when I finally saw it as an adult, I realized you saved yourself, kid.
Yeah, and when they go, it's like, oh well, you want to see on a screen it's meant to be seen on. I think that size screen is absolutely fine for the holiday special.
Oh yeah, the bad reception would have done me some favors. I was all I'm saying. It stuck around. So, but getting back to this holiday special too, one of the things that I do have to say that I am very intrigued by, and I hate to bring up a line from Love Actually, where the crappy American president says, well, we essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, we respect the laws and issues of the previous administration. And it is still nice to see that even in this first episode, we're not ignoring why does it always forget the name of the child, the timeless child. We're not ignoring that part. Like you said, it works into the story, but it's nice to see that we still, for those of us that have been on the journey and we're not just coming in now, these some of these elements are carrying forward.
Well, the thing is, and I think we said this when we were talking about the last episode, it's I thought I didn't like the idea of the timeless child, and I didn't like some of the ideas which Chibnall brought in. I realized it's not that I didn't like the ideas; it's just that they weren't realized. They did nothing with it. Like he just threw out these ideas and then didn't unpack them at all. And it's like, why would you come up with something so big like that and not really properly explore it, not have the emotional resonance to it, not have the emotional fallout for the Doctor of that, which RTD being like, that's his bread and butter, that's his mother's milk, is kind of bringing out the emotional heft of something. And he's just knocked out of the park. I care about the timeless child arc now in a way that I just didn't until now. And I'm really trying not to kind of like rag on the Jodie era, because like I think Chibnall did a fine job with that on his own. But it sort of does feel like I'm sorry, he kept on throwing out idea after idea, some of which were just copies of stuff which had been done before, like having a Doctor from nowhere, the fugitive Doctor. Oh, what you mean, like the War Doctor? Having Gallifrey blown up again, which, by the way, it was that easy for the Master to blow up Gallifrey all this time? I mean, he could have done it at any time. Really, there's so much which he just chucked out there and just did nothing with. And RTD is great at playing the ball where it lays and giving you something. It's like, oh, you don't care about the timeless child? Well, look at this. Like, oh, yes, I do. It's like, because it's why Ncuti kind of feels lost, and why kind of like he will bond so well with Ruby, particularly because they have that kind of shared experience. And again, why people who are adopted might suddenly kind of go, oh, wow, the Doctor's representing me in a way that he never has before, without it feeling forced.
The thing about, because this obviously was very heavy on, the chosen family concept, right? One that we definitely, after the pandemic, I think really have heavily gravitated towards. But the thing that I really liked that came out of this, sorry, I just completely lost my thought mid-thought. The robots behind me were moving.
I was going to say, I saw the robots behind you and I was kind of distracted.
They started moving, and then I just completely lost what I was going to say about it. But
oh my God, we're three middle-aged men getting distracted by little robots behind you.
My own fault. This is the hell of my own creation too. And I'm sure it was something very, very profound. I'm sure. Oh well, no. The thing, the whole timeless child concept, is that it was a construct that I'm still willing to put up with anyway, even before he picked it up, because it at least made the Doctor truly what we all viewed him as, which is this guy who says he's a Time Lord, but he's just not on the same page as all the other Gallifreyans. So this kind of made all of that, in a way, make sense. Because, yeah, you know what? He's not truly Gallifreyan, or more to the point, the Gallifreyans really aren't truly Gallifreyan, and he's probably the most that they wanted to become, almost in a weird Davros evolution kind of way. But the Timeless Child story at least made the Doctor that much more of a special individual compared to the rest of the Time Lords, who always seem to just be mucking things up.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Timeless Child sort of thing is something I've never sort of really sort of like engaged with much, to be honest. Sort of thing. It's there, I'm aware of it, but never really sort of like it's not particularly important. And I quite like the way that, if anything, RTD is, he's making nods to it, sort of thing, but it's not the main thread. And I think that's fair enough. He has to sort of like, in some ways, respect what's come before with like Sir Chibnall and what have you. With the whole Doctor history sort of thing, I always felt he was part of the Time Lords, but he was an outsider. He didn't fit. He didn't agree with what they did. But I know there's always been this. I think when the show has struggled, sort of thing, there's always been this temptation to reinvent the history of the mystery of the Doctor, sort of thing. They tried to do it with Sylvester McCoy, and that didn't necessarily work out too well, sort of thing. All of a sudden he was, he wasn't just a Time Lord. Somehow he was like linked to what Rassilon was doing. He was there at the beginning. It was this air, they tried to reintroduce this air of mystery, sort of thing. And I can see, Chibnall tried to do the same with the Timeless Child. But I think it's as I say, I think going forward, sort of thing, there'll be nods to it. It will be acknowledged, sort of thing. But I think there's going to be a bigger arc and a bigger story and a different direction that the show's going to go in. So it sort of respects those fans that love all that the new Timeless Child stuff, but it's not so in your face that it aggravates those of us that aren't really that bothered by it. So
yeah, and I'm glad that even though he's brought it in, it hasn't, the way that Chibnall was presenting it, it seemed to make the Doctor a god amongst the Time Lords, and it's like, oh, he only they are responsible for everything, and it's like, Doctor's not that. Like, when you make the Doctor a god, in real terms, I think you take something away from the character. I think there's something lovely about it being this just outsider rogue, like amongst his own people, or their own people, sorry, I should say. And here it kind of, it feels like it takes that off it. It kind of, it uses it to give him a foundling status without bringing in all that kind of god business, which I just think that kind of ruins the Doctor, because he shouldn't be a god. He should just be a guy or a person who's doing their best in some difficult situations and is just quite good at getting out of situations.
Yeah. And the Doctor, the Master, the Rani, the Time Editor, all these Time Lords sort of thing they didn't fit with the very straight-laced Time Lord society, and that's why they broke off and splintered in different directions. And I think that's but you don't need to be a god to do that. The problem is, you start making things gods and all powerful and all knowing, then you end up with a character that's actually quite limited, because he just knows everything, sorts everything out, and nothing's a surprise to them. And that was the beauty of like some of the old stories, I think, is that the Doctor discovered, as the viewer discovered, what was going on. Things were lifted a bit from his eyes, and all of a sudden, hey, this is the real situation that we're facing here. So whereas if you get this omnipotent person sort of thing, then they already know about it, they can sort it. So
I now want to see a show based on Paul's description, where basically there is just like this posh part of Gallifreyan society, and they're picking up the version of the National Enquirer to find out what the Doctor and the Master are up to. Like, oh, look at these ne'er-do-wells knocking about.
I love it. Let's get on to the goblins. I do like that when they jump on the rope ladder, which is very kind of dramatic, very nice kind of way of having them meet each other proper, Ruby and the Doctor. And then when they go on, I like I wasn't sure when I kind of heard the Goblin song. I was like, oh wow, that's very different from Doctor Who. But I felt the musical number in this one did work very well. RTD's talking about doing it more and more in Doctor Who episodes, like one a season, maybe one a season. But I don't want it to be. I don't want to be every episode. It's like, and now the musical number. That would feel quite.
I thought it was a stretch when Strange New Worlds got me to watch a musical episode of Star Trek. Okay, RTD, pare yourself down. Okay, I don't know if I could sit through an entire musical episode of Doctor Who. You know what? I'm going to go back and stop Joss Whedon from ever doing this on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh gosh, it's great on Buffy. Buffy is the kind of go-to. The other person we won't mention so much because stuff. But I think just because Buffy the Vampire Slayer did it perfectly doesn't mean every show needs to do it. However, again, I thought the music here was fine. I think the fact that they've got a musical baddie coming up in the guise of Jinx Monsoon is going to be playing a musical baddie. I forget, there's the music maker or music whatever their name is in the episode, and that's around the Beatles kind of music. That kind of, again, if you want to do a bit of music in there, that kind of fits very well. But hopefully it isn't kind of, as I say, a musical number a week would maybe it'd be a little bit much for me.
Yeah. Although the thing that I just sat back, sorry, Paul, I'll shut up. But the part that I just loved, the moment I realized that there was a musical number happening, I'm just like, okay, wait a second. I was fully invested, and it wasn't because of the music itself, but I'm like, how are they going to sing about eating a baby? What is about to happen? So I was locked in on those lyrics like you wouldn't believe. I was so thankful for the closed captioning being on at that point because, oh man, I'm like, how are they going to sing? But anyway, Paul, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, all I was going to say there was that I think the musical bit sort of thing I enjoyed because of the lyrics. I thought that was quite funny sort of thing. I think basically, if I could have sort of 5 minutes with RTD, I would sort of say concentrate on the storytelling, concentrate on the story sort of thing. Try to resist putting in these elements which you think will be fun, sort of thing, sometimes just for the sake of doing it, because the likes of, I think it came out in the Unleashed sort of thing. The Goblin song, had already been recorded when they got to like the rehearsal side of things, and it came as a bit of a shock to, I think, a lot of the production that, hang on, sort of thing. This is already, he's already got this lined up. This was always going to be in here, sort of thing, and he needed to put something around it. And I think that's the thing. Put something in, as you said. The insect with like Buffy, it made sense because the Buffy singing the song episode. It ties in with the story. The story explains why everyone's singing, sort of thing. Having this in the Doctor Who, it was just there for a bit of fun. And I enjoyed it, sort of thing. But unless it adds to the actual storytelling itself, sort of thing, you start to end up with these sort of fragmented, almost like little set pieces in a 50-minute episode of, we'll have one of these and we'll have this and we'll have that and we'll have the other. It was the same bit like with the dancing scene with the Doctor. Now, as far as I'm heard somewhere, I think, sort of thing, this was a nod to how RTD met his partner, sort of thing, and the first time he saw him. So he effectively recreated that as like as a little tribute to his partner. And I get that sort of thing. But when you start to put these things in and then you build a story around it, I'm not sure it works all the time. Concentrate on the story. That's what people are missing these days. Especially with a lot of carry on.
It's funny you mentioned that, Paul, because I really feel like there is a part of the story that is missing, because it seemed more like when you look at the situation where the singing comes up, right? And then finally Ruby and the Doctor fall into the situation, you expect all these goblins to rush them, but instead suddenly they're singing, and it's almost like there's a missing part of the story where, like, once the music starts, the goblins love the music and it helps kind of keep them at bay. And you know what I mean? It just because it did. They were all partying along until the shenanigans happened. But it's like it seemed like there was something missing, telling us that part.
That's true, but I would give a quick nod because Ncuti Gatwa again in Doctor Who Unleashed said that it's like he was expecting them to be going onto a soundstage to record this before the episode, and he's going, and it was getting closer and closer, and we hadn't done it. I was like, oh, we're going to be seeing this live on the day. Fair play to them. You would not know that they were like the way it's kind of come out. It sounds really great, and it sounds like they didn't re-record it, so they must have got the mics really well set up to capture it live. And yeah, great performance by Ncuti and Miley Gibson, I thought.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Was it Millie Gibson?
Millie, yes, yeah.
Millie.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Yeah. So next of all, so I did like it when we go. We sort of mentioned a little bit before about Ruby's family, and we get a lovely scene with them when they get back down to Earth after they've come down with the Mavity clubs. And I love the grandmother. For me, she's like the MVP of the family. It's just great when like the doctor comes in and goes like,
I've abandoned my
Cherry
cup of
Sunday.
tea.
Oh yeah. Just
I've
continue
abandoned my cup of tea and moved on to a life of abstinence.
And
The
as soon as
tea
the doctor
gag
comes-
through the whole thing. Oh my gosh.
And they don't overspike it, but they're kind of like, I like the implied joke of like, oh, I've taken a vow of abstinence. Then suddenly the doctor comes around the corner with his absolutely beautiful self, and I think the vow of abstinence goes out the window right then. It's
Yeah.
been like and it kind of is a weird sort of like flip in the episode Rose when the doctor meets Jackie Tyler and she's flirting and he goes no, and like this doctor's goes like, oh yeah, you're a sweet treat, yeah, and like it very much playing the sort of like gay best friend kind of thing of like flirting with your nan and just having a really good time, and everyone just takes to him, and I thought that was just really charming myself.
That is the other weird thing that you think about it with the doctor. There is something I think that must be exude. I know it's a fictional character, but I mean, in that world, there must be some pheromone, some calming pheromone or something that he must release, because her family was so so accepting of this guy running around the apartment. I know somebody said he's the doctor, but still,
Yeah.
I do get the feeling. Paul?
Yeah, I was going to say on that front sort of thing. I think if that's one thing I did kind of struggle with, sort of thing, with Ruby's character, was how accepting and how quickly she was almost in like Clara mode, sort of thing. For a 19-year-old, she was incredibly confident. She was unfazed by what was going on. So, if you like compare the likes of Rose to when she sort of like suddenly encountered the doctor and went on her first travels with him and things like that, it was all kind of some cases a bit overwhelming, a bit new. Ruby just took it in her stride, sort of thing, very confidently, and that's a bit Clara-like for me, which is something I struggled with Clara, was that all of a sudden you're meeting this time traveler, you're meeting goblins, you're climbing on a ship, sort of thing, you're surrounded by all these things, and you can just break into song and dance, sort of thing, and come up with lyrics, sort of thing.
Although she did it. I kind of like the fact that one of the lines was diddly 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 dee, like she was struggling to come out. I do like they kind of gave that nod, because I know.
Well, wasn't there even a lyric about like trying to find the next word? No, I'm thinking about Buffy again. Darn it.
I think this line's mostly filler. I think that's Buffy. But yeah, I think they kind of gave a little nod in there with, as I say, diddly diddly dee, that it's kind of it's two-edged sword, because you don't want her to appear like she knows everything to begin with, but at the same time you've got to move a story along when you've got an hour to introduce quite a lot in this episode. So I think they did enough that I think she isn't going to be completely Clara-like in that way. So I think you might be pleasantly surprised, Paul.
And I think by the end of the episode, it's like they kind of try and counter that type of perception, because now that the peril of the baby being taken is gone, no matter what the extreme crazy situation, it's like suddenly reality starts to slowly catch up with her as she's thinking about all that. I'm jumping ahead though, but when she's thinking about all those elements, it's like suddenly it is all just catching up with her, because she's been in pure adrenaline reaction mode.
That's true. But yeah, to continue the story as we go. So then I do like the fact that when we see Ruby disappear, they have set up very nicely that she is obviously a bit of the glue of the family. The fact that she's a grown adopted child of them means that she is part of kind of like raising child. Like, she refers to the child at one stage when they're taking it as get off my child. She takes an ownership. And so when she disappears from the story, it kind of makes sense that they didn't adopt so many children, that the mum's become cynical and just goes like, oh, I just do it for the money, which clearly she doesn't at heart, but she is kind of, you can tell she's a bit broken by her experiences, that she hasn't had that support, that things have been tough, that the nan suddenly lost her spark. I thought that all kind of worked very well when she disappeared.
Also, nice callback to the Van Gogh episode during Smith's era with the, then why are you crying?
Yeah, and the fact that the doctor cried with her, I thought that was very, very nice. And I think, given the fact that maybe the bi-generation has made the doctor realize, like, if you don't deal with stuff as you go, it will one day catch up with you and you will be run thin, as David Tennant's returning doctor was. Whereas this is a doctor who doesn't want to make those choices. He wants to kind of like process stuff as he's going. And I thought that worked very effectively. Paul?
I had more trouble with that, to be honest, sort of thing, because we suddenly had the doctor in tears, but in the next breath he just jumps in the TARDIS, hops back, and goes back in time to put things right.
Well, he's still got to get on with it. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. it just seemed to, if he had, I don't know, I couldn't see why, he knew what he was going to be doing, sort of thing. So I didn't see why he necessarily got emotionally sort of, because he knew he was going to fix it by going back to the...
Well, you're still seeing someone hurt. I think even if you can fix something, still seeing someone who... I know he's just met these people, but he's obviously a very empathetic doctor, and I think he kind of like that's part of his version of the doctor's powers, which we've seen the doctor having psychic powers, and I think that's his kind of like his empathy is very in tune with people. So when someone's hurting, I think that was my interpretation of it anyway. Will?
Actually, don't mean to derail the active conversation, but I'm wondering now, again, callbacks, if we're running in this very first story, if we're running into a continuity issue, or we're running into a Matt Smith's doctor in the jacket, out of the jacket situation. The episode starts off with Ncuti doing the voiceover, talking about Ruby being dropped off at the church, and the shot of him coming out of the TARDIS, he has got a very evident tear on his cheek, and the narrative even says something along the lines that nobody knew who she was until the night, until later when the doctor came, and he's crying. Then we get to this point in the episode we're now discussing. He comes out. That's just it's either just a different shot, or we actually saw the moment where he'll do something with the person that dropped off the baby. You know what I mean? I don't know which one it is right now, but I instantly picked up on that. I'm like, this isn't the same shot. You showed me this before. You've mentally got me prepared to accept this moment now that I'm seeing it, and it's different. What's up?
I like that. I did not pick up on that. That's good.
One of the comments that RTD has said, sort of thing, is that the scene they will be returning to the church, sort of thing, and there are other characters that we haven't seen at the church. That is something that he has said. So So I think you probably hit on something there.
And you mentioned Matt Smith. It's a bit Matt Smith like in his first series with Amy Pond, where we kind of return back to that moment at the end of the series that we start the series on.
I also have to wonder how much RTD goes into this now, knowing that people are going to over dissect, because it's what he's trained us to do with Bad Wolf and You Are Not Alone, Yana, and you know what I mean, and the like. He has trained us to look for potential clues. So it's like, I wonder if I'm being over analytical in some cases.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Then what Paul's saying, RTD, it sounds like as a sort of kind of certainly heavily hinted at what you're saying.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better because it makes me feel a little less obsessive.
And I think it partly explains why, because you have this, where the doctor sees the woman walking away having dropped off the baby, but he makes no attempt to actually go after her to find out her identity or
Yes,
anything like that.
because I feel like at that time he's respecting that decision, and I think we're probably going to uncover a lot of stuff. We'll get on to Miss Flood in a bit, but I think that's going to tie into why he needs to find out who the woman is. I think a lot of things, or maybe by then he knows it's Miss Flood for some reason, but I think what he's going to discover along the way is going to lead to him needing to know. Whereas when he didn't, I think he was trying to respect that person decided to drop Ruby off, and that it's not up to us to up to him to sort of like change that knowledge, if that makes sense.
Am I the only one of us on here that's like done like a 23andMe though? Because the likelihood of Ruby not even having like a possible distant relative, third cousin kind of situation really is in show terms versus reality is suspect. Because seriously, I didn't expect to get much, and I'm still reminded of extremely distant genetic relatives that are now tested and are coming up in my queue, if you will.
Well, yeah, no, I've never done it, so yeah, I don't know how it all works together, but
okay, let me put it this way: it's very, very hard for you not to have a genetic connection somewhere on God's green earth.
Well, that's the thing,
DNA
though. But does
now.
that mean Ruby is an alien, or Ruby kind of relates to another time traveler who's taken out time? Because, I mean, again, we may as well just.
It's another thing. It's another crumb that's dropped, my friend.
Well, let's face it.
They found nothing.
After the Doctor's gone to the past, pretty much he comes back to the present. That's the main thrust of the episode done. So let's talk about Miss Flood, because one thing which someone put out there, which I thought was an interesting idea, I dismissed it to begin with, only because RTD said about kind of like he always wants to bring in new aliens and new baddies and new kind of like things. However, he brings in old concepts when he wants to, and I think it might be that this is the theory which came up with, which I'm kind of like warmed up to, is that Dodie, the old Doctor Who companion from the first Doctor, she said about Miss Flood says about last seeing a police box on the street. I think she says 50 or 60 years ago, or like 50 years ago, I think it is, which is when Dodie was in the TARD. It would like the time works perfectly to that, and maybe she had a kind of adventures after the Doctor left her, and maybe that's why, because she's sort of out of time, is why she isn't appearing on any registers, because she's kept off them. What's everyone's theories on Mrs. Flood?
I don't know.
Go on, go for it, Will.
Well, no, I was just going to say the only other beneficial thing I bring to the podcast now is that I have a different perspective, because when I watched the episode, I got up to where Ruby goes into the TARDIS, right, and then you guys experience the credits, and then you got this bonus clip of Mrs. Flood. I got a commercial for Disney Plus saying new Doctor, new home, spring 2024, Disney, and then Ncuti came up, and then Disney Plus, ding, and then I got this clip we're talking about. I honestly just wrote it off as it being kind of a tongue-in-cheek moment, because if she knows what a TARDIS is, and with so much time travel going on, it's really hard to conceptualize how she works into anything yet. But if she knows what a TARDIS is, then why would she be blaming the neighbor, who she obviously always has a tiff with, for putting it there?
I think that's subterfuge. I think that's so she blends in. So whatever the truth of her character is, like if she just straight away acts as if she knows what a TARDIS is, then everyone's onto her. If she kind of like blames the guy next door and everyone hears her doing that, that kind of throws people off the scent. And certainly the way the BBC have been putting out stuff going, who is this mysterious Mrs. Flood? We will find out. And it was on Unleashed and everything like that. So they're definitely setting something up. And Nita Dobson, again, I don't know what your awareness of her going into this was, Will. Yeah. Nope. Essentially there's, EastEnders.
I've heard of
Eastern. Sorry, that's what I mean. She was like the original landlady of the Queen Vic, which is the main pub in it. And one of the main like huge early storylines was, I think she was only in it for like, I was like on extras, the Unleashed, they were saying about she was in it for like 3 years, and that's insane to think, because she's remembered as this huge presence in EastEnders, but she was only in it very near the beginning. And there was one scene on Christmas Day when Dirty Den, which was her husband, like serves her with divorce papers on Christmas Day, and that was the big huge kind of dramatic thing. And so it's kind of like she is a kind of big deal in the UK. She also married to Brian May, just as a random thing from Queen. Just a little bit of a side thing, but
so then obviously it's not somebody you just bring in for a laugh.
I mean, you could do just for a cameo episode, but it's definitely not going that way. And I think RTD, because he does love the soaps, and he does love his kind of like maybe forgotten kind of actors who are kind of really great, and he's very good at kind of bringing people back who have maybe been forgotten over the years and giving them a great second act. Like, let's face it, Bernard Cribbins was so many things, but the last thing he's remembered for is Wilfred Mott, thanks to RTD.
The only thing I have to wonder is if it's just going to be something where in a later episode, the Beatles is a little too distant. Well, unless it's like if they're hinting like around the 60s, right? Then it would kind of make sense if she was also somehow in that episode. And that's where she sees the Doctor in the TARDIS. Because she really seems unfazed and open to the Doctor. You know, that's one thing. So I don't know, but Paul, did you give your like full thoughts on her? What do you think? I don't understand.
I mean, there's a ton of theories going around. The fact that flood, rain, anagram Rani, sort of that whole side of things.
I'm surprised there hasn't been like flood, river, and somehow she's part of the song family.
River is also, that's also been mentioned. The fact that if you look at the three doors, like the doors of the houses, sort of thing, they look like different generations of the TARDIS because they are
all blue. I noticed that.
Yeah, so there's like a whole load of stuff. You can tie yourself in knots with this stuff, to be honest. I think, and I think, as you mentioned earlier, we are now, or the audience is conditioned, or a certain section of the audience is conditioned to dissect every little aspect of the episode, trying to find all these threads and pull them together. And so I think you just wait and see. There's also been theories that she's Ruby. Herself as a later time sort of thing, so we just don't know sort of thing. So but it's clearly, I think it's very important. I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't get out a pocket watch and change halfway through the the series.
Well, I mean, she does. This weird guy in his blue box. So I guess she knows what a TARDIS is. And doesn't she say something like "Good luck, Ruby" to her?
Yes, she does.
So she knows she's about to go off on an adventure.
Yeah, and also you get this breaking of the fourth wall as well, where she leans towards the camera and says, "You know what a TARDIS is." So it's
and just to polish things off, we get a nice little coming soon on Doctor Who for the season ahead, which is of course. Pretty much tradition at this stage, but
Oh, you did? All the little quick flashes and images of things to come?
Did you not get that?
No. I got an ad to rewatch the Star Child or whatever the name of it was.
I feel really bad for complaining now because it keeps on coming up on like recommend on YouTube. It's like I've seen, like I love the trailer.
I know. I'm sure if I go on YouTube, it'll recommend it. I'm just saying, it would have seemed like it would make sense to throw it on the end of the credits for Disney Plus, but they've got like 20 different languages they have to give the credits for as well at the end of them. I don't know if you've ever.
All I want is at the end of the new first season of Doctor Who, is to have a count on how many outfits exactly Ncuti Gatwa was worn. I think we get like 3 different outfits in this one alone, if not 3 or 4, including different tops and stuff. The guy just is born to wear some cool clothing. I swear, it's just he is a clothes horse, this man.
Yeah, I think the only thing that didn't blend in was the hat for me.
I thought it was kind of fun, and I think it's the same hat as he got from Craig from the Lodger episode. What's his name? Corden.
Oh, James Corden.
Yeah, when he gets the cowboy hat, I think it's that hat, which I believe he's set to appear in one of the episodes of this series. So I think we might see that hat again.
Okay.
Yeah, because originally, well, there was something about him guest appearing in an episode of this, and when I saw the picture of him with the hat, I thought it was from that, but it appears to be from this episode. So I think we're going to see that little cowboy hat again. I think that's maybe a little foreshadowing of something.
Yeah. It didn't. They didn't go with these budget Tony Stark gloves for pulling down, pirate ships and impaling them on church spires, did they?
All I'm saying is,
well, we put some LED lights in the knit gloves, sir.
The only thing I forgot to say about the gloves is I just wish David Tennant had those when he was first regenerating and he fell through the bloody skyline and just get as few kind of cuts on him. That should have triggered the regeneration line, but we won't go into that.
I forgot all about that, man.
Wounds. No, when I saw those gloves, that was the first thing I thought of, him just falling through the sky and being absolutely fine in that episode. But anyway.
Oh my gosh! I mean, well, when people were talking about complaining about the goblins being too mystical and magical, I mean, the Master was brought back with a potion. Yep. Guys, come on. Everything.
And at the moment, he's currently in a gold tooth. And that's not going to be a problem when he comes back.
And one of the things I did like about the episode is that they didn't, kind of for that suspension of disbelief, even though they've taken this rope ladder up to the ship, it almost makes it sound like the goblins are on a different reality and they're just flirting at the edge of ours. They can't completely come in. They can send a few down and they're able to breathe the bad air for a while or something. Because the moment the ship comes all the way down, it gets destroyed. So I like the way they did kind of do that too. It kind of it's where alternate reality creature and fantasy collide, I guess.
I was going to say, yeah, it's sort of kind of folk of the faraway tree if you've ever read the Enid Blyton. So it's
Well, Paul, I can see behind you, you got your Doctor Who 2024 calendar ready. Get ready to mark on it. May, we've got Doctor Who back and we've got Gallifrey stands back. Yeah, we're coming back for the season again. So what we're going to do is the same thing as we do in the specials. We're going to have a different kind of guest people coming in alongside me. And of course, gents, it would be lovely to have you back for an episode or two of the run.
Wherever I fit in. I'm sure Paul is going to ask not to be on any more with me, but I understand.
Not at all. We're probably linked through 23andMe. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. I wouldn't doubt it.
Probably that cousin 96 times removed or something like that.
So. Well, when I did run the results, it came back like mostly European. Basically, in parentheses, says you are just incredibly white. So, yeah.
Actually, that's what we're going to call the editions with the three of us, the incredibly white edition. Actually, we could do the Beatles episode for that reason. It's the white edition now.
There you go. Fair enough. Well played, sir. Well played.
Thank you very much for joining me, gents. This has been great fun as always. Thank you, Paul.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Will.
I thoroughly enjoy it. Happy to be here whenever you want me.
I've been Dr. Squee, and until next time, live like you've got two hearts, and please be kind. I'm Dr. Squee. That was Gallifrey Stands. Oh, and with me was Willow.